You'll go bankrupt. The maid's daughter's words froze the billionaire mid-signature. In seconds, a 14-year-old girl unraveled a $300 million betrayal no one else had seen. Rain hammered the glass as the billionaire's voice cut through the silence. It's robbery, Mark. You know it. I know it. Across the room, a maid emptied a bin. Beside her sat a 14-year-old girl, small, quiet, invisible, until the moment Robert Harrison pointed straight at her. You? What do you think? Should I sign the deal? The girl closed her book, looked him in the eye, and said, No, sir. If you do, you'll go bankrupt. The room froze. That was the moment everything changed. This is the story of how a maid's daughter saved a billionaire and exposed a $300 million lie. And before I forget, where are you watching from today? Leave a comment below. We love seeing how far these stories reach. Enjoy the story. A 14-year-old girl held the fate of a $300 million deal in her hands. She just had to wait for the billionaire to stop shouting. Then she would tell him the truth. The penthouse office was silent, except for the sound of the rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the sound of Robert Harrison's voice. It's robbery, Mark. You know it. I know it. Robert, a man whose face was used to easy smiles and boardroom power, was pale. He paced the thick carpet, his hands clenched. His rival, Mark Jennings, sat comfortably in a leather armchair. Jennings did not look worried. He looked like a man who had just laid a perfect trap. It's business, Robert, Mark said smoothly. It's the Apex deal. It's a clean merger. You get the tech, they get the buyout. It's expensive, yes, but it's the only move you have left. The only move, Robert muttered. He looked cornered. In the far corner of the vast room, a woman worked quietly. Susan, the maid, emptied a small wastebasket. She kept her head down. She tried to make no sound. Her only job was to be invisible. Beside her, sitting in a small, upright chair near the staff door, was her daughter. Emily was 14. She had bright blonde hair pulled back in a simple tail. She was reading a thick, worn-out hardcover book. Her school backpack was at her feet. She was just waiting for her mother's shift to end. Robert stopped pacing. He stared at his rival. He felt the walls closing in. The deal was bad. He felt it in his gut. But Mark was right. His company needed this merger, or his competitors would tear him apart. My lawyers say the paperwork is sound, Robert said, his voice strained. He was trying to convince himself. Your lawyers are correct, Mark said, leaning forward. He placed the thick contract on the coffee table. The signing is tomorrow at noon. Just put your name on it, Robert. It's done. A wave of bitter frustration washed over Robert. He felt foolish. He felt trapped by men who were supposedly his friends. He gestured wildly around the room, his eyes landing on the maid and her daughter. This is absurd, Robert snapped, his voice sharp with sarcasm. This whole thing is so simple, so obvious. Even she could see it. He pointed, not at his rival, but directly at the 14-year-old girl in the corner. Mark Jennings chuckled. Robert, you're tired. Susan, the maid, froze. Her heart hammered in her chest. She looked at Robert Harrison with wide, terrified eyes. Sir, please, she's just... But Robert ignored the mother. He was locked on the girl. You, he demanded. You're reading a book. You look smart. What do you think? Should I sign it? Should I buy the Apex company? Susan was about to grab her daughter and run. But Emily did not move. She slowly placed a bookmark in her book. It was an old military history text. She looked up, first at her frightened mother, and then at the billionaire. Her blue eyes were calm. They were not the eyes of a child. They were clear and steady. She looked at the contract on the table. Then she looked at Robert Harrison. No, sir, Emily said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. Robert's sarcastic smile faded. He frowned. What did you say? Emily stood up. She was small, but she stood straight. You shouldn't sign that, Mr. Harrison. If you do, you'll go bankrupt. The silence that followed was absolute. The rain hammered the glass. Susan, the mother, looked like she might faint. Mark Jennings let out a short, ugly laugh. What? Bankrupt? What is this, a joke? He turned to Robert. This is what happens when you let the help get too comfortable. Fire her. But Robert Harrison did not look at Susan. His eyes were locked on Emily. He had heard the word bankrupt. He had also heard the certainty in her voice. Why? Robert asked, his voice a low command. Emily took one step forward. She pointed at the contract on the table. Because that company, Apex, it isn't rich. Emily said. She spoke in plain, simple words. It looks rich, but it owes a very large amount of money to 3 other companies. The debt is hidden. It's in the back pages of their reports. Mark Jennings's face went stiff. The smile was gone. Emily continued, her voice steady. Your paper says you are buying the company, but it also has a hidden rule. It says that if the company is sold, all its secret loans must be paid back in 1 day. She looked at Robert. Not in 10 years. In 1 day? The moment you sign that, their debt becomes your debt. The 3 companies will come to you, and you will have to pay them. Robert stared at her. He did his own math, his mind racing. The cost of the deal, plus the hidden debt. How much? Robert whispered. About $300 million, sir, Emily said. On top of what you are already paying. They are not selling you a company. They are selling you a hole. You will fall into it. You will go bankrupt. Mark Jennings suddenly stood up. His face was red. This is insane, he sputtered. You're listening to a child? A maid's daughter? She's making it up. He grabbed the contract and thrust it at Robert. Sign the deal, Robert. Don't be a fool. Robert Harrison looked at Mark. He saw the sweat on his rival's upper lip. He saw the panic in his eyes. Then he looked at the 14-year-old girl. She was calm. She was not afraid. She had just saved him. Security, Robert said, his voice like ice. 2 guards, standing by the main elevator, stepped forward. Mark Jennings smiled, thinking they were for the girl. Good. Get her out of here. Escort Mr. Jennings from the building, Robert commanded. He is no longer welcome here. Mark's jaw dropped. Robert, you can't be serious. You're going to listen to this nobody. I am, Robert said, his gaze never leaving Emily. Now leave. The guards took Mark by the arms. He struggled for a second, his mask of control completely gone. You're finished, Robert. You hear me? Finished, he shouted. The elevator doors hissed shut, cutting off the words. The penthouse was silent again. Susan, the mother, was trembling. Mr. Harrison, sir, I am so sorry. She didn't mean. Emily apologized to Mr. Harrison. Emily looked at her mother, her expression soft. Then she turned back to the billionaire. Robert Harrison stared at the girl. He felt a chill run down his spine. His lawyers, his advisors, his whole team, they had all missed it. But she had seen it. You, Robert said, pointing a single, steady finger at Emily. With me. Now. He turned and walked toward his private study, not waiting to see if she followed. Susan let out a small gasp. This was it. They were going to be fired. Or worse. Emily just picked up her old history book and followed the most powerful man in the city into the lion's den. Robert's study was smaller than the main office. It was dark wood, filled with books. He closed the door, leaving Susan wringing her hands in the hall. He did not sit. He turned to face the 14-year-old girl. Who are you? He demanded. It was not an accusation. It was a question. My name is Emily, she said. My mother is Susan. Don't play games with me, Robert said, his voice sharp but not angry. He was confused. How did you know that? The debt. The 1-day clause. My legal team has been looking at this for 3 weeks. They said it was perfect. Emily looked down at the book in her hands. My grandfather taught me, she said. Your grandfather? Is he a lawyer? A banker? He was a quartermaster, Emily said. In the army. A long time ago. He was a war veteran. Robert frowned. A quartermaster? That's a supply sergeant. Yes, Emily said. He told me wars are not won with guns. They are won with ledgers. With knowing who has what and who owes what. She tapped the cover of her book. He taught me how to read a ledger. He said most people look at the big numbers. The money coming in. He taught me to look at the small numbers. The money going out. He said that's where people hide their secrets. Robert was speechless. A long-dead soldier had taught this child how to read a corporate balance sheet better than his $1,000 an hour lawyers. So I read their report, Emily said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. While I was waiting for my mom, I saw the Apex company was paying small amounts of money to 3 other companies. Every month. It looked like interest. So I found the loan papers. And I found the rule. She looked up at him. It wasn't hard to find. They just didn't want you to look. Robert Harrison walked to his desk. He sat down heavily. He had been hours away from total ruin. He had been betrayed. Mark Jennings hadn't just brought him a bad deal. He had brought him a loaded gun, pointed at his own head. This was not a mistake. This was an attack. I am in a war, Emily, he said, his voice quiet. And I am losing. He looked at the girl. She was not a spy. She was not a threat. She was, impossibly, the only person who had told him the truth. I have a board meeting tomorrow at noon, Robert said. That is when I am supposed to sign that paper. That is when Mark Jennings and his friends will be waiting for me to destroy myself. He leaned forward. I don't just need to stop the deal, Emily. I need to know why this trap was set. Mark isn't smart enough to do this alone. Someone else is behind this. He was thinking aloud, but he was also asking for help. You have until tomorrow morning, Robert said. He pointed to a small, secure laptop on his credenza. I want you to look again. I want you to use my computer. Find out who Mark is working for. Find out exactly what they plan to do. He paused. He realized what he was asking. He was asking a child to fight a war for him. Your mother will be paid for her time, he said quickly. For your time. Whatever you want. Emily looked at the laptop. She thought of her mother, who worked so hard, whose feet were always aching. She thought of her grandfather, who always said, You help a man who is under attack. That is the rule. I don't want any money, sir, Emily said. But I will help you. She took a deep breath. Can my mother stay with me? And could we maybe get some coffee? My grandfather always drank coffee when he was reading ledgers. Robert Harrison stared at the 14-year-old girl. For the first time in a week, he felt a small, genuine smile touch his lips. I'll get the coffee, he said. You get to work. Susan stood stiffly by the door of the study. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She watched as a quiet assistant brought in a tray. On the tray was a silver pot of steaming black coffee, 2 china cups, and 1 glass of milk. Robert Harrison took 1 cup of coffee. He pushed the other cup, and the milk, toward Emily. Thank you, sir, Emily said. She poured a small amount of coffee and added the milk. She did not seem nervous at all. She seemed prepared. Emily, what are you doing? Susan whispered, her voice tight with panic. Mr. Harrison is a very busy man. We have to go home. We are in trouble. Robert looked at Susan. His face was not angry. It was tired, but now, for the first time, it held a flicker of hope. Susan, he said, his voice gentle. Your daughter is not in trouble. She is helping me. Please, sit down. He gestured to a soft leather chair. Susan looked at the chair as if it were a trap. She perched on the very edge of it, her back rigid. Emily was already at the small desk with the secure laptop. Her fingers moved over the keys. Robert watched her. He expected to see a child checking social media or playing a game. Instead, Emily opened a secure portal. She typed in Robert's guest credentials. She did not go to the internet. She went straight to the public databases for corporate filings. The Apex Company, Emily said, more to herself than to Robert. They are registered in Delaware. But their debt holders, they are offshore. My team said that makes them impossible to trace, Robert said, moving to stand behind her. Impossible just means it takes longer, Emily said. She clicked through a series of complex menus. Her face was illuminated by the glow of the screen. My grandfather always said, when a man hides his money, he is being smart. But when he hides his debt, he is being afraid. Afraid of what? Robert asked. Afraid of someone like him, Emily said. Someone who looks at the receipts. She pulled up the first company, Icarus Holdings. It was registered in the Cayman Islands. It held 1/3 of the $300 million debt. She pulled up the second, Orion Ventures, registered in Switzerland. It held another third. The third was Helios Group, registered in Singapore. It held the final third. It looks clean, Robert said, frowning. They are spread out. No connection. That's what they want you to think, Emily said. She opened 4 more windows on the screen. She began to cross-reference director names, registration agents, and signatory banks. Susan watched, her heart pounding. She did not understand what she was seeing. She only knew that her daughter was talking to a billionaire about millions of dollars. It felt like a dream. There, Emily said. She pointed to the screen. On the Icarus Holdings file, the listed corporate lawyer was a man named Thomas Bishop. On the Orion Ventures file, the registration agent was a small firm in Geneva. On the Helios Group file, the signatory bank was a private bank in Singapore. They are different, Robert said. No, sir. They are not. Emily opened another database. It was a list of international law firms. She typed in the name, Thomas Bishop. Mr. Bishop is a partner at a very large firm, Emily said. That firm has 3 main offices, one in New York, one in Geneva, and one in Singapore. Robert felt a jolt. The same cities. Yes. The law firm in Geneva is the registration agent for Orion. And the bank in Singapore, their biggest client is that same law firm. Emily looked up at Robert. The three companies are not three companies. They are one company. One person. They just built walls between the rooms to make it look like a maze. But it's all one house. Robert sat down in the chair opposite his desk. He felt cold. One person, Robert repeated. Mark Jennings doesn't have this kind of power. He isn't this smart. No, sir. Mr. Jennings is a salesman. He was sent to make you sign. The real owner is the one who holds the debt. The one who will be paid. Who? Robert asked. His voice was a rasp. Emily was quiet for a long time. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She was no longer in public databases. She was moving through layers of corporate ownership, following the trail of the law firm. She was following the leash. Finally, she stopped. She had found a name. She did not say it. She turned the laptop screen so Robert could see it. Robert Harrison leaned forward. He read the name. His face went white. He did not say anything. He just stared. Susan, seeing his reaction, stood up. Sir? Are you all right? What is it? Robert put his head in his hands. He made a low sound. It was not anger. It was pain. David, he whispered. David Miller. Susan looked confused. Mr. Miller? Your friend. Susan knew David Miller. He came to the penthouse often. He was Robert's oldest friend. He was on the board of Robert's company. He had been the best man at Robert's wedding. He was a kind man who always smiled at her and asked about Emily. He's not my friend, Robert said, his voice hollow. He looked up, and his eyes were filled with a terrible, cold understanding. He's the one who told me to trust Mark Jennings, Robert said. He said the Apex deal was our only chance. He pushed me to sign. Now, Emily spoke. She laid out the full, terrible plan. It was not a merger, sir. It was an execution, Emily said calmly. Mr. Jennings was the distraction. Mr. Miller was the real buyer. She pointed to the screen. Mr. Miller owns the $300 million debt. When you sign the paper tomorrow, you will owe him that money. Instantly. Robert's breath hitched. You won't be able to pay it in one day, Emily continued. Your company's stock will crash. Everyone will say you are finished. She paused. And then, your friend, Mr. Miller, will come to you. He will offer to help. He will offer to buy your company. To save it. He will buy it for almost nothing. You will be so grateful, you will say yes. Robert's face was ashen. He saw it all. The trap was perfect. And once he owns it, Emily finished. He will pay himself the $300 million he is owed. He gets the company. He gets the money. And you get nothing. He was going to take everything from you. And he was going to do it while pretending to be your best friend. The room was silent. The only sound was the steady drumming of the rain. Susan had tears in her eyes. That is evil, she whispered. To do that to a friend. Robert Harrison stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the dark, wet city. He had built that city. And his oldest friend had just tried to burn it down, with him inside. He felt the anger rise, hot and choking. But beneath it, he felt a deep, chilling fear. The meeting was at noon. In less than 12 hours. Mark Jennings would be there. David Miller would be there, sitting at his right hand, ready to look sad as Robert destroyed himself. The lawyers would be there. The board would be there. He was walking into his own execution. He turned from the window. He looked at Susan, the terrified maid. And he looked at Emily, the 14-year-old girl who was calmly sipping her milk and coffee. He will win, Robert said, his voice flat. I can't stop it. If I don't sign, my stock collapses. If I do sign, I am bankrupt. The trap is already sprung. He looked at Emily. He was not a billionaire anymore. He was just a man. What do I do? He asked. Emily put down her cup. She looked at him with her grandfather's steady eyes. My grandfather said you never fight an ambush on the enemy's terms, she said. You are right. You cannot win at the meeting. So I run. Robert asked. No, Emily said. She stood up. You don't stop the meeting. You go to it. She pointed to the laptop. Mr. Miller built a maze. He thinks you are the rat. But he forgot about one thing. What? Robert asked. He forgot that a maze has more than one entrance. He built all these walls. Icarus. Orion. Helios. He thinks they hide him. But they are also assets. He owns them. Robert frowned. What are you saying? You are going to walk into that meeting tomorrow, Mr. Harrison, Emily said. You are not going to sign the paper to buy Apex. She smiled, a small, quick, and very intelligent smile. You are going to buy him. Robert Harrison stared at her. The idea was absurd. Buy him, Robert said. Buy David Miller? That's impossible. His net worth is almost the same as mine. It would take months. I have 12 hours. You are not buying David Miller, sir, Emily said, her voice patient, like a teacher explaining a simple problem. You are buying Icarus Holdings. She pointed to the laptop screen at the first of the 3 shell companies. This one, she said. The one in the Cayman Islands. It's the smallest. Robert was still lost. Emily, that's just a name on a piece of paper. It's a box. It's worthless. Why would I buy a worthless box? Because Mr. Miller's trap is very complicated, Emily said. And complicated things break easily. She took a breath, gathering her thoughts. She had to make it simple. My grandfather said, never use your own money if you can use someone else's. Mr. Miller is doing that. He doesn't have $300 million in cash. He borrowed it, using Icarus, Orion, and Helios. He made a deal with his own banks. Robert leaned in. Go on. His deal is just like yours, Emily explained. He has a secret rule in his own loan. I found it. His banks agreed to lend him the $300 million, but only if he kept all 3 of his companies separate. If anything changes, if even one of his companies is sold, the banks can panic. They can ask for all their money back. Instantly, a small, dangerous light began to dawn in Robert's eyes. It's a house of cards, Robert whispered. He built a house of cards, and he's trying to get me to blow on it. Exactly, Emily said. But you are not going to blow. You are just going to pull one card out from the bottom. You are going to buy Icarus. What happens then? Robert asked. The moment you buy Icarus, you become the new owner. Mr. Miller's banks will see that his house is broken. They will call him. They will demand their $300 million back. All of it. By the end of the day, Robert's mind raced, seeing the beautiful, terrible logic of it. He won't have the money, Robert said, a grim smile touching his lips. He can't have it. It's all tied up, waiting for me to fall into his trap. He'll be the one who is ruined. He will be bankrupt, Emily said, using her own word from before. The silence in the room was electric. Susan, on the edge of her chair, looked back and forth between the billionaire and her child. She finally understood. This wasn't just talk. This was a war. Robert's energy changed. The tired, defeated man was gone. The predator was back. How? He snapped. Icarus is a private shell. He won't sell it to me. Not by noon. He doesn't have to, Emily said. She pointed to a tiny line item in the Icarus ledger. It's not just a shell. To get the bank loan, he had to make it look real. Icarus Holdings owns 1% of a small shipping company in Panama. That company is real, and it is traded on the public market. She looked up. You don't have to buy Icarus from Mr. Miller. You just have to buy that shipping company. You buy the asset, you own the shell. It was brilliant. It was a loophole inside a loophole. Robert Harrison strode to his desk. He slammed his hand on a private phone line. His voice was no longer a whisper. It was a roar. Get me Alan. I don't care what time it is in Hong Kong. Get him on the line. Now. Susan jumped in her chair. Robert covered the receiver for a second and looked at Emily. Alan is my broker. What do I tell him? Tell him to buy 51% of Panama Sea Trade Logistics, Emily said, reading the name from the screen. Tell him he must do it quietly, and it must be complete by 11:45 a.m. He should start buying in small pieces, then buy the last big piece all at once, right before the market closes for lunch. Robert nodded, relaying the instructions in sharp, precise bursts. Alan, listen to me. I don't care what it costs. Liquidate the Wilson portfolio. Yes, all of it. I want you to buy a controlling interest in a company called, what is it? Panama Sea Trade Logistics, Emily said. Panama Sea Trade Logistics. Robert barked. The deal is done by 11:45, New York time, not 11:46. Do you understand? Good. He slammed the phone down. He immediately hit another button. Get me London. Get me Sarah. Now. He looked at Emily. My international lawyer. What's next? When the purchase is complete, she must immediately file a change of ownership notice, Emily said. She must send that notice to 3 banks. She calmly read the names of the banks in Switzerland, Singapore, and the Caymans. David Miller's banks. Tell her the notice must be sent at 11:50 a.m. Exactly. Robert gave the orders. He was a general on a battlefield, moving his armies. For 10 minutes, the study was filled with his voice. He was clear, powerful, and absolutely ruthless. He spoke to bankers, lawyers, and holding companies. He moved millions of dollars with a single word. He was risking every cent of his liquid cash on the word of a 14-year-old girl. Susan watched him. She had been cleaning this man's home for 5 years. She had only ever seen him as a polite, distant, and sometimes sad employer. Now, she was seeing the man who had built an empire. It was terrifying. Finally, Robert hung up the last call. The room was quiet again. It was 4 a.m. The rain had stopped. Robert slumped into his chair. It was done. The orders were given. The trap was set. Now, all they could do was wait. He looked at Emily. She was calmly finishing her glass of milk. "You," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "You are not a child." Emily looked at him. "I am, sir. I'm good at math. And my grandfather told me to always read the fine print." Robert let out a short, sharp laugh. "Your grandfather? I would have liked to have met him. He was a good man," Emily said quietly. "He received the Distinguished Service Medal. He found $6 million of accounting fraud at his supply base. They said it saved the whole regiment." "He was a hero," Robert said. "He was a quartermaster," Emily corrected gently. "He just counted the supplies." Robert nodded slowly. "A hero." He looked at Susan, who was still frozen on the edge of her chair. "Susan," he said, "you can go home if you wish. I will have my driver take you. You and Emily will be safe." Susan looked at her daughter. Then she looked at the billionaire. "Sir," she stammered, "what is going to happen at the meeting?" "David Miller is going to walk in. He will think he is coming to my funeral," Robert said, his eyes like cold steel. "Instead, he will be walking into his own." Susan shivered. "I would like to stay, sir," Emily said. "If that's all right. I want to see it." Robert studied her. He saw her intelligence. He saw her composure. But he also saw the steel in her spine. It was just like his. "No," Robert said. Susan let out a breath of relief. "You are not staying here," Robert continued. "You are coming with me." Susan's relief vanished. "Sir, no. Please. She is a child. This is not her place. This is dangerous." "Susan, your daughter just saved this company," Robert said, his voice firm. "She just saved me. She is the only person in this building I trust. Mark Jennings will be there. David Miller will be there. I want them to see her. I want them to see the person who outsmarted them." He stood up and straightened his tie. He was exhausted, but he looked powerful. "Susan, you will come too. You will sit in the front row. You will watch your daughter work." "Work?" Susan whispered. "But I'm the maid." Robert smiled. It was the first genuine, warm smile of the night. "Not anymore," he said. "As of this morning, you are my new executive assistant. And Emily is my new senior financial advisor." He looked at the 14-year-old girl. "That is," he said, "if you'll accept the position." Emily stood up. She straightened her simple shirt, mirroring him. "I accept, sir," she said. "On one condition." Robert raised an eyebrow. "My mother gets a company car," Emily said. Her feet hurt. Robert stared at her for a long second. Then he threw back his head and laughed. It was a loud, real, and sudden laugh that echoed through the penthouse. "Done," he boomed. He looked at the clock. 6 a.m. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of gray and purple. "Now," Robert said, "we have 5 hours until the meeting. I suggest we all get some breakfast. And Emily, I have a few more questions for you about my company's ledgers." The next 5 hours passed in a strange, tense quiet. The penthouse, usually humming with the quiet activity of a large staff, was still. Robert had given most of the staff the day off. Only his most trusted head of security and a private cook remained. They ate a simple breakfast: bacon, eggs, and toast. Susan could not eat. Her stomach was in knots. She sat at the magnificent dining table, staring at the china plate. She had polished this table just yesterday. Now she was a guest at it. It felt wrong. It felt dangerous. Robert ate mechanically, his mind clearly elsewhere. He kept checking his private, secure phone. It never made a sound. Only Emily ate like a normal person. She ate her eggs and drank a glass of orange juice. She seemed to be the calmest person in the room. After breakfast, Robert's personal assistant, a sharp woman in her 50s, arrived. She had been called in for an emergency. "Susan," Robert said, "this is Maria. She will find you something appropriate to wear." Susan was confused. "Appropriate, sir? For what?" "For the boardroom," Robert said. Susan's blood ran cold. "Sir, no, I can't. Please. I am a maid. I cannot go in there." Robert looked at her. His face was kind, but his voice was absolute. "You are my assistant, Susan. You will be there. Emily will be there. This ends today, with all of us in that room." An hour later, Susan was transformed. Maria had given her a simple, elegant dark blue dress and low, practical heels. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked not like a maid, but like a professional woman. She just felt like a terrified one. Emily remained in her simple school clothes. She had declined any change. She sat on a sofa, not reading her history book. She was reading the annual report for Robert's company. She turned the pages slowly, her brow furrowed in concentration. Robert sat in his study, making quiet calls. His voice was low, confirming details. Finally, at 11:30 a.m., he put down the phone. He stood up and straightened the jacket of his dark gray suit. He looked at Emily. He looked at Susan. "It's time," he said. The 80th floor was the executive floor. The boardroom was at the far end of a long hall. The floors were marble. The air was hushed. When the private elevator doors opened, Robert Harrison stepped out. He was not alone. On his right was Susan, his maid, now looking like an executive. On his left was Emily, a 14-year-old girl in a simple shirt, clutching a company report. The receptionists, the vice presidents, and the executive assistants who bustled through the lobby all stopped. They stared. Whispers erupted. People pointed, their faces a mix of shock and confusion. Is that Susan the cleaner? Who is that child?" Robert Harrison ignored them all. He walked straight ahead, his face set like stone. Susan kept her eyes on the floor, her cheeks burning with shame. Emily just looked straight ahead, her expression neutral. They reached the great oak doors of the boardroom. Robert pushed them open. The room went silent. It was a long, darkwood table. Seated around it were the 12 most powerful people in the company. The board of directors. At the far end sat Mark Jennings, a smug smile on his face. He had the thick Apex contract in front of him. And at Robert's right-hand side, in the chair reserved for his most trusted partner, sat David Miller. David looked up, a warm, concerned smile on his face. "Robert, thank goodness. We were getting worried." "We." His voice died. He saw Susan. He saw Emily. His smile flickered. Confusion, then annoyance, crossed his face. "Robert," David said, his voice low and sharp. "What is this? Is this a joke?" "They are with me," Robert said, his voice flat. He pulled out the chair at the head of the table for himself. Then he did something that made the entire board gasp. He pulled 2 more chairs from against the wall. He placed them directly behind his own. One for Susan. One for Emily. "Robert, this is a closed-door meeting." One of the board members, a stern woman named Helen, protested. "We are discussing billions of dollars. You cannot have your staff and a child in here." "I can," Robert said. "And I will. Let's begin." He sat down. Susan and Emily sat behind him. Susan looked like she wanted to evaporate. Emily simply opened the company report and placed it in her lap. David Miller stared at Emily. His eyes were cold. He had seen her in the penthouse, waiting for her mother. He saw her now. He looked back at Robert, his expression changing to one of professional concern. "Robert, my friend," David said, his voice full of fake kindness. "You are under a lot of pressure. It's erratic. Maybe we should postpone this vote." "No, David," Robert said. "We will not postpone." Mark Jennings laughed. "Let's just get this over with, shall we?" He pushed the thick contract down the table. "Robert, the signature page. It's time to save your company." Robert Harrison stared at the contract. He looked at the large clock on the wall. 11:42 a.m. He picked up the contract. He stared at the first page. The room was silent. Everyone watched him. "Robert," David prompted gently. "Just sign it. We are all here for you." Robert said nothing. He turned the page. Slowly. 11:43 a.m. He turned another page. 11:44 a.m. "Is there a problem, Robert?" Mark Jennings asked, his smile tightening. "It's a simple deal. Buy or die." Robert looked up. He stared, not at Mark, but at his oldest friend, David Miller. "It's a big decision, Mark," Robert said, his voice calm. "I just want to be sure I've read all the fine print." The clock on the wall ticked. 11:45 a.m. Robert's private cell phone, sitting on the table beside him, gave a single, silent buzz. A text message had arrived. "Alan, it is done." The trap was sprung. The purchase was complete. Robert Harrison was now the owner of Icarus Holdings. He kept his face perfectly still. He looked at the clock. 11:46 a.m. 11:47, 11:48, 11:49. He waited. He needed the final piece to be in place. He needed Sarah's notices to be sent. At 11:50 a.m., his phone buzzed again. Sarah, notices sent. The banks are informed. Now, Robert Harrison put the contract down. He did not pick up the pen. He looked around the table at his board members. Thank you all for coming, he said, his voice changing. The exhaustion was gone. It was replaced by a cold, clear power. The Apex deal is dead, he announced. The room was stunned. Mark Jennings shot to his feet. What? You can't. The market opens at noon. Your stock will be worthless. You'll be ruined. Yes, Robert said. I would be. If I signed this. He pushed the contract away. But I am not signing it. Robert, what are you doing? David Miller cried, standing up. He put on a perfect show of panic. You're committing suicide. The board must overrule him. He's not well. Sit down, David, Robert said. His voice was not a request. David froze. He had never heard that tone from Robert. I am not signing the Apex deal, Robert said to the room. Because I found a better one. A much more profitable one. He looked at Mark Jennings. You, Mark, are a frontman. A cheap salesman. You can leave. You're insane. Mark blustered. Security, Robert said. The oak doors opened. 2 guards stepped in. Mr. Jennings is trespassing. Remove him. Mark's face went pale. You can't do this, Harrison. You're finished. The guards took his arms and dragged him, protesting, from the room. The boardroom was in an uproar. Robert, have you lost your mind? What is the meaning of this? Quiet. Robert's voice cracked like a whip. The room fell silent. Robert Harrison's gaze settled on his best friend. The real problem, Robert said, is not the Apex deal. It's the $300 million in secret, high-risk debt used to set the trap. David Miller's face went white. Not red. White. He stared at Robert. He did not understand. How could he know? I believe you know all about that debt, don't you, David? Robert asked. David tried to laugh. It was a dry, choking sound. Debt? Robert, you're not making sense. I think you need a doctor. Oh, I have one, Robert said. He gestured over his shoulder. My new senior advisor. She is excellent at finding sickness. David Miller finally looked, really looked, at the 14-year-old girl behind Robert. Emily met his gaze. Her eyes were clear and steady. In that moment, David understood. He had been found out. But he was still safe. He was hidden behind his shell companies. You can't prove a thing, David hissed, his mask of friendship gone. I don't have to, Robert said. As of 11:45 a.m., I am the new, proud owner of Icarus Holdings. The blood drained from David's face. He physically stumbled, grabbing the table for support. What? He whispered. I bought it, Robert said, enjoying the moment. I bought your little Panama shipping company. And with it, I bought your shell. And with that, I broke the terms of your loan. David's phone, sitting on the table, began to ring. A frantic, buzzing sound. He looked at the caller ID. It was his private banker in Geneva. He ignored it. It rang again. Immediately. This time, it was Singapore. David was breathing hard. You should answer that, David, Robert said, his voice laced with ice. They want their $300 million back. I believe the due date is right now. David Miller stared at Robert. The hatred in his eyes was pure. You, he choked out. You did this. No, David, Robert said. He stood up and pushed his chair back. He put his hand on Emily's shoulder. She did. The entire boardroom stared at the 14-year-old blonde girl. Emily just looked back at David Miller. She said nothing. David's phone rang a third time. It was the bank in the Caymans. He was ruined. He was trapped in his own snare. He let out a strangled, animal-like sound. Then he turned and ran from the room, leaving his ringing phone on the table. The boardroom was absolutely silent. The board members looked at Robert, then at Emily, then at the empty chairs of the two traders. Robert Harrison looked at his new assistant. Susan, he said. Yes, sir, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please ask everyone to leave, Robert said. The board meeting is over. Susan did as she was told. She walked to the heavy oak doors and opened them. The board members, who had been whispering frantically in the hall, looked at her. Yesterday, she was the woman who cleaned their coffee cups. Today, she was the woman who held the door for their dismissal. Mr. Harrison, she said, her voice shaking but clear. asks that you please clear the floor. The meeting is over. They stared at her. Then, one by one, they turned and walked to the elevators. They looked confused, defeated, and terrified. They had just witnessed an execution, and they were not sure what it meant for them. Susan closed the doors. The click of the latch echoed in the vast, silent room. Robert Harrison let out a breath he felt he had been holding for 24 hours. He sank into his chair at the head of the table. The adrenaline was gone, leaving behind a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. And something else. Clarity. He looked at the two people still in the room with him. Susan was standing by the door, wringing her hands, looking as if she expected to be scolded. Emily was calmly placing her company report into her school backpack. She zipped it up. "Emily," Robert said. His voice was quiet. She looked at him. "Yes, sir." "Why did you help me?" he asked. "When I pointed at you, when I was rude to you. Why didn't you just stay quiet?" Emily thought for a moment. She looked at her mother, then at the billionaire. "Because they were lying," she said, as if it were the most obvious reason in the world. "Lots of people lie." "Emily," Robert said, a sad smile on his face. "That's business." "My grandfather said that's not business," Emily replied, her voice firm. "That's just theft. He said you have to stop theft when you see it, or you're a part of it." She paused. "And you look like you were in trouble." Robert stared at her. This 14-year-old child had a moral compass stronger than his entire board of directors. A compass she had inherited from a long-dead supply sergeant. He turned his gaze to Susan. She flinched. "Susan," he said. "Yes, sir. I'm so sorry, sir, for all of this," she stammered, falling back into her old role. "Susan," Robert said, his voice gentle but firm. "Stop apologizing." She froze. "The job offer I made this morning was not a joke," he said. "And it was not a temporary reward. I am a man with very few friends. As of today, I have one less." The pain of David's betrayal flickered in his eyes. "I am surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear. My lawyers, my board. They all missed this. They would have let me walk off a cliff." He stood up and walked over to Susan. He looked her directly in the eyes. "I need people who tell me the truth. I need people I can trust. I trust you, and I trust your daughter." He motioned to the chair beside him. "Your job as my executive assistant begins now. Your salary is triple what it was. Your first task is to sit down." Susan looked at the chair, then at his face. She saw he was serious. Slowly, trembling, she sat down at the great boardroom table. Robert then looked at Emily. "And you, Emily, your position as senior financial advisor. That is also real." "Sir, she has school," Susan whispered, horrified. "She can do both," Robert said. "I don't need her to be here every day. I need her to look. I need her to read the fine print." He walked back to the head of the table. "That report," he said, pointing to her backpack. "My company's report. You were reading it this morning. What did you see?" Emily was hesitant. I only looked at the first part." "Tell me," Robert commanded. Emily unzipped her backpack. She pulled out the thick, glossy report. She flipped to a page near the back, one filled with charts and small numbers. "Here, sir," she said. She pointed to a section. "You spend $40 million a year on legacy properties. It's a group of 3 factory buildings in Ohio. You haven't used them in 6 years. But you are still paying for heating, insurance, and taxes. A lot of taxes." Robert frowned. He knew about those properties. "That's just old business. We'll sell them eventually. You are paying a man named Mr. Walters $1 million a year just to manage them," Emily said, pointing to another line. "But Mr. Walters is also the brother-in-law of your head of operations. And the heating company he uses, it's owned by his wife." Robert Harrison went very, very still. It was not the same as David's betrayal. This was not murder. This was just rot. The quiet, everyday rot of people stealing from him because he was too big to notice. "It's waste," Emily said simply. "My grandfather said waste is just a different kind of debt. You are losing almost $5 million a year on those empty buildings. You should sell them. And you should fire Mr. Walters." Robert looked at the page. She had been reading his company report for an hour, and she had already found $5 million he was burning. A quartermaster's daughter. Counting the supplies. Robert Harrison felt a new, strange feeling. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was relief. He felt, for the first time in a decade, like he was not alone. He picked up his private phone. "Get me the head of human resources," he ordered. "And then get me the head of legal." For the next hour, Susan and Emily sat at the table and listened. Robert Harrison, with Emily's report open in front of him, began to clean his house. He was polite. He was precise. He was ruthless. He dictated memos. He fired executives. He ordered the immediate sale of the Ohio properties. He was taking back control of his company, one wasted dollar at a time. Susan watched, her terror slowly turning into a kind of awe. Emily just listened, occasionally pointing to a line in the report when he asked her a question. Finally, he hung up the phone. The room was quiet again. The noon sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust motes in the air. "That," Robert said, "is the best day's work I've done in 10 years. He looked at Emily. "Thank you, advisor." Emily blushed. "You're welcome, sir." He then made one last call. It was to his personal bank. "Yes, I need to set up a new trust fund. The beneficiary is Susan." "Yes, my assistant." "And her daughter, Emily. I want to deposit $5 million. "Yes, today. And I need a car delivered to my building. A new Mercedes." "Yes, for Susan." "Thank you." He hung up. Susan was pale. "Sir, $5 million a Mercedes? I cannot accept that. It is too much." Robert shook his head. "Susan, do you know what David Miller tried to steal from me today? My entire company. My life's work. And he would have done it. He would have taken everything." He looked at Emily. "What is the price of that? What is the price of saving a man from ruin? It is not $5 million. That is just a bonus. The price is loyalty. And you have both earned that." He stood up. He walked to the door and held it open. "Now," he said, "I believe it is lunchtime. And I am quite sure Emily has homework to do." Susan stood up. Her legs felt steadier now. Emily shouldered her backpack. The three of them walked out of the boardroom together. In the main lobby, the whispers started again. But this time, they were different. The staff and executives watched as Robert Harrison walked to the private elevator. He was not with a rival. He was not with his board. He was with his new executive assistant. And he was with a 14-year-old girl with blonde hair, who had just saved them all. They did not look like a billionaire and his staff. They looked like a team. Robert pressed the button for the lobby. The doors began to close. He looked at Emily, who was looking at the numbers on the floor indicator. He realized his company was safe. He realized his finances were, for the first time, in honest hands. He had been betrayed by his oldest friend, and he had been saved by the maid's daughter. Sometimes, a person's greatest strength is not their wealth or their title. It is their ability to see the truth when everyone else is blind, and to find the hero that no one else thought to look for. 6 weeks later, the penthouse office was quiet. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden rectangles across the polished floor. The stormy, frantic energy of that terrible night was a distant memory. The rain was gone. Robert Harrison sat at his desk. He was not pacing. He was not shouting. He was reading. In front of him was a proposal for a new research and development wing for his company. It was a 9-figure investment. It was bold, forward-thinking, and his entire new board was excited about it. The door to his office chimed softly. "Come in," he said. The door opened, and Susan entered. She held a digital tablet in her hand. Her dark blue dress was immaculate. The anxious, hunted look she used to wear was gone. She moved with a quiet, efficient confidence. She was no longer a shadow. "Sir," she said, her voice warm and professional. "Your 3 o'clock meeting is here." Robert smiled. "Send her in, Susan." "Thank you." Susan nodded and stepped back. A moment later, Emily walked in. She was still 14. She still had her blonde hair pulled back in a simple tail. She still carried her school backpack. But today, she also carried a slim, leather-bound portfolio. "Mr. Harrison," she said, taking the seat opposite his desk. Susan quietly placed a glass of water for her and then sat in the chair beside her, tablet at the ready. "Emily, thank you for coming," Robert said. He gestured to the proposal. "The tech acquisition. You've read the file." It was not a question. "Yes, sir," Emily said. She opened her portfolio. "The company itself is very good. Their technology is strong. The price is fair." "But," Robert asked. He had learned to listen for her pauses. "But the deal they are proposing includes the land for the new lab," Emily said. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a map. "They want you to build the new lab on a property they own near the old rail yards." "It's a good location," Robert said. "It's central." "It's a bad location, sir," Emily said simply. She pointed to the map. "I checked the city planning records. It's public, but it's hidden in the meeting notes from 3 months ago. They are approving a new 6-lane highway. It will run right here. Her finger tapped the edge of the property. It will be loud. The air quality will be poor. And the construction will disrupt the work for 2 years. Your new scientists will not be happy. Robert leaned forward, his eyes sharp. His team, his new, better team, had missed this. My grandfather always said, "It's not just what you buy, it's where you put it," Emily said. She pointed to another spot on the map, a few miles away, across the river. It was an empty patch of land. This land is for sale by the city. It is half the price, and the city is building a new park here. She tapped a green-colored square. It will be quiet. Your people will be able to think. You should buy the company, but not their land. You should build here. Robert Harrison stared at the map. It was simple. It was brilliant. It was not a $300 million trap. It was just a smart, $5 million decision. This, he thought, is how empires are truly built. Not in one big, dramatic fight, but in 1,000 small, smart decisions. He looked at Susan. She was smiling, a small, proud smile. He looked back at Emily. "And the highway?" Robert asked. "When did the city approve that?" 3 months ago, Emily said. "The sellers, they must have known about it when they made the offer. They were trying to sell you their bad land before the news became public." Robert nodded slowly. The world was still full of liars. The difference was, now he had someone who knew how to read the fine print. "Thank you, Emily," he said, his voice full of genuine respect. "You just saved us a very expensive headache." He closed the proposal. "Susan, please get our real estate team on the line. Tell them we are changing the location. And send a message to the sellers. Tell them we will buy the company, but their land deal is rejected. Make the offer 10 million lower for their dishonesty." "Yes, sir," Susan said, her fingers tapping the tablet. Emily began to pack her portfolio into her backpack. "You're leaving?" Robert asked. "I have a history test tomorrow, sir," Emily said. "On the European theater. I need to study." "Ah," Robert said. He stood up as Emily and Susan stood. "Of course. What's the subject?" "Logistics, mostly," Emily said, zipping her bag. "How the war was won not just by the soldiers, but by the supply lines. The people who counted the bullets, and the food, and the fuel." Robert Harrison smiled. A true, deep smile. "I am sure you will do very well, Emily." "Thank you, sir. Goodbye, Mom. I'll see you at home, honey," Susan said, walking her to the door. Robert was left alone in his office. He walked to the vast window and looked down at the city. It was his city, and it was safe. His company, which had been hours from ruin, was now stronger and cleaner than it had ever been. The news of David Miller's spectacular, self-inflicted bankruptcy had been the talk of Wall Street for a week. He had lost everything. He had been ruined by his own greed. Robert's stock, after a brief, sharp dip, had soared to an all-time high when the news broke of his new internal advisory team. The market loved a leader who could clean house. He had lost his oldest friend, but he had gained something far more valuable. He had gained clarity. He had spent his life looking for brilliance in boardrooms, in expensive law firms, and in fancy degrees. He had been looking for heroes in all the wrong places. He had been blind. He learned that a company's greatest assets are not its buildings or its bank accounts. They are the quiet, overlooked people who see the truth. The ones who are not afraid to speak it. The ones who, when you are under attack, will tell you the truth, even when the world is built on lies. He had found his hero, not in a suit of armor, but in a schoolgirl with a backpack. And that, he knew, was a lesson worth more than $300 million. And that's where we'll end the story for now. Whenever I share one of these, I hope it gives you a chance to step out of the everyday and just drift for a bit. I'd love to know what you were doing while listening. Maybe relaxing after work, on a late-night drive, or just winding down. Drop a line in the comments. I really do read them all. And if you want to make sure we cross paths again, hitting like and subscribing makes a huge difference. We are always trying to improve our stories, so feel free to also drop your feedback in the comment section below. Thanks for spending this time with me.